I'd like to welcome you all to...
Microphone.
Microphone.
Make sure you, thank you.
Can you hear me? Ah, great.
Oh, yeah, you sound much better.
Okay.
now, Terry.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the November 29th meeting of the General Plan Committee. And hereby call to order the November 29th, 2023 meeting of the City of Prescott General Plan Committee. Board members, well, actually, before I get to the board members, I'd like to acknowledge that we have Mayor Phil Good present, and we have Councilman Ted Gambogi. And I saw Councilwoman Connie Kentelme a minute ago. She was here. Maybe she'll be back.
Can you maybe announce our new development director?
Oh, yes. Chelsea is our new development director. Congratulations. And so now roll call for the committee members. I'm present, and oh, by the way, I'm the new chair since Ted Gambogi has been taking a seat with the city council. And Don Michaelman is our new vice chair.
Yay.
And Don Michaelman's present. And then we have Tom Hutchinson, who is replacing Ted on the committee. And continuing on this, Andre, not present. Mary Fredrickson, present. Ralph Hess has been excused. Jim Huffman's present. Rod Moyer, present. Gary Warb, present. And James McCarver, not present. Okay, so Ralph
No quorum.
and James.
6.
Okay. All right, so we have
7.
6. We're
1,
good.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7.
Oh, and we now have Eric Moore has come in. Connie has come back. There's Connie. Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I was just looking at Connie for a minute. Oh, sorry. Lois Fruman is here. So we have Lois and Ted and Eric and Phil. And a minute ago we had Connie. She was here, but she's blocked out. Can't have too many. Okay. All right. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
So we need 4.
So we need 4 for a vote to pass anything. And we do have a quorum with 7. All right. The first item after a roll call is open call to the public. And Tammy, do you want to take over for that?
Yes, sure. The City of Prescott welcomes public engagement, and residents may comment and address the committee on matters not included on the agenda during the call to the public. Please complete a speaker card that's on the back table and submit it to city staff prior to the meeting being convened. Speakers are allowed to 4 minutes, and the call to the public would be limited to 40 minutes in total. Citizens are limited to addressing the committee 4 times regarding the same topic. Members of the committee may not discuss items that are specifically identified on the agenda, and therefore interaction will be limited to the following: responding to criticism, requests to staff to investigate and report on the matter, or requests that the matter be scheduled on a future agenda. We have one person, J.D. Greenberg.
Can you say again the name?
J.D. Greenberg.
J.D. Okay.
J.D. Greenberg.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. I just want to say that with the 2015 general plan, I was appalled that there were only a couple of paragraphs regarding open space and wildlife. And for the past 20 years, those have been areas that I have devoted a lot of my time to. So in that spirit, I would like to ask that there be one of these sessions that would be focusing on the open space and primarily wildlife issues. I know that it has to be specific to Prescott, but there are some areas where they might be able to do some mitigation. I was thinking about some of the PAD developments where they have 25% of open space, but currently that 25% is not required to be contiguous, and it is not required to be related to wildlife corridors. So that might be something that we could take a look at. Along those lines, I've contacted Jeff Gagnon with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. He has been just a real help over the years for the SIMPO EMAC committee, which focuses on the impact of roads and highways on wildlife corridors. So he has indicated that he would be willing to come up here and do a presentation for you guys. And I think it would be a wonderful opportunity to get some new ideas that could be implemented in the general plan.
Who is that? I'm sorry.
Jeff Gagnon, Gagnon.
Yeah.
So I hope all that will take place, and I look forward to attending it.
Mr. Chairman, can I address that?
Sure, absolutely.
Actually, I'm very happy to address that, and what I miss, I'm sure Rod or Eric could fill in. We are representing open space trails and that for the element. I did that last time, actually. There is a larger section that is kind of hidden, or it's in Prescott Valley. But for this one, we will be hopefully meeting soon with Joe Baines and Chris Hosking and discuss exactly those issues. I just recently wrote the goals and objectives for that element, which will be discussed first internally and then shared. And I specifically included wildlife and that. That's a huge area for me. You already know that I did lobby years ago to our former illustrious congressman that there were absolute monies dedicated only for wildlife corridors, and our former illustrious congressman couldn't be bothered. They couldn't be used for anything else. In case you don't know, Prescott by Lowe's is the third highest deer kill zone in the state of Arizona, and that affects every one of your car insurances because I did a survey of the insurance agencies, and they said yes.
It had been the 7th highest fatality rate for wildlife from Frontier Village up to the Walmart. And while we've been trying to get some support to do an underpass or some mitigation on State Route 69, it has now been elevated to the 3rd
Yeah.
most dangerous stretch of highway
Yeah.
in the state.
Yeah, so
And later on, when we discuss land use too, because that is a land use.
Sure.
I'll ask. I'm on the EMAC committee with JD, and and Jeff is on that committee, and I'll talk to him tomorrow when I see him about coming in February to talk to you
Yeah,
about ideas.
I don't want to minimize it all because for me it's been,
Yeah, ADOT did a study, and that's what's come out of that study.
yeah, it's been a priority for many years.
Sounds good.
To see more than 2 paragraphs on wildlife and have it put into practical areas where there actually can be some enforcement. We've talked about this before. I know the general plan is just a suggestion, but perhaps there can be some suggestions as to how it can actually become codified.
That particular stretch of highway, by the way, is affectionately or disaffectionately called Slaughterhouse Gulch.
Thank you, JD. All right, any more public comments?
No others.
Okay, so next on the agenda, we have approval of the October 25th General Plan Committee meeting minutes. Recommended action is move to approve the minutes as presented. Do I have a motion?
Ask if there's any corrections.
All right, do you have anybody have any comments or corrections for the minutes from the last meeting? James?
Sorry, I was not here, but reading through the minutes, I just wanted to get a little bit more information. Mr. Gambogi asked about a 10-year projected traffic plan, and Mr. Mattingly responded that SIMPO have access to that information. I'm just curious where that can be, where can I look at that?
If you go on to SIMPO's website, all their plans are on their website.
So for the traffic projection plans?
Yes,
And I think actually they do it at least every 5 years, right?
every 5. And they're starting to update the last one already.
All right. So do you have any corrections for the minutes? Okay. Any other comments or corrections for the minutes? Okay. Anyone want to make a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes as printed.
Second.
Okay,
Third.
moved and seconded. Let's, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Vote is now 8, since we have our 8th member. 8.
I'm going to recuse myself because I wasn't part of that.
Oh,
so-
okay, make that 1 no vote, so 7.
Recused.
One
He recused, yes.
One recused.
abstain.
Okay, so 7 and 1 recused.
Okay.
Which reminds me, we now need 5 votes to for a majority vote. All right, next on the list, we have presentation of a work session from the City Planning Department regarding a review of the community vision in the general plan.
And I want to apologize for getting the agenda and stuff back out yesterday morning. I had it set to go out on my email on Wednesday. I was out of the office and it didn't work. So I didn't realize I got back in. Yeah. But I'll make sure not to happen again because I want to make sure you guys have plenty of time to go through this. But this is a work session. It's a little different format than we've done before. But this is going to set the stage to how we're going to move forward starting in January, and how the elements are going to be presented in the general plan. So
Down is up.
I don't know. Okay, so the state statutes just tells us what we have to have in the general plan, but it doesn't say how we have to present it or have it in the general plan. So what we're seeing a lot of jurisdictions doing around the state, and I gave you a link to one in the state that are doing it in a different way. We did show you guys earlier last year, at the very beginning, Greensboro, South Carolina, they won a national planning award, and they did a really great job. They had big ideas, these 6 big ideas for their community. We're not Greensboro, North Carolina. We're not Scottsdale. We're not Glen, these other communities in the valley. We have our own issues, but we're trying to take how they broke it out and make it fit for Prescott. So we just wanted to get this conversation going. So at the open house, we have, in the existing general plan, we had what the Prescott vision. The vision was quality of life. So basically, they had energized downtown, friendly neighborhoods, employment opportunities. Now, for the open house, we added safe and affordable housing because that's been a huge discussion throughout the state, throughout the country. And then we asked what else is important for the quality of life. And here's the board, and it was kind of a dump board for everything else that wasn't on any other boards, and some of them were replicates. So do you guys have a summary of all this? I emailed it to you and included it in the packet. But I wanted to just show again, you can look at it if you want. But the questions we were asking, do we want to rename these? What elements can go under each topic, and should these be expanded? So we just wanted to kind of get you guys kind of thinking about that. So this explains the elements that we have to have in the plan. The land use, circulation, open space, growth area, and all these. And then we have the other ones that we've added, economic development, implementation, community quality. So these are what we have to have in the plan. But what we sent was Gilbert, the 2020 general plan. We really liked the way that it was laid out, and the topics that they use. And then we also showed you the Greensboro 2040 comprehensive plan. So Gilbert, they broke it up into 3 categories. Community, which had the land use, growth areas, and community areas. They had opportunity, parks, open space, and recreation, infrastructure and public services, and then community services. And then connectivity, which is circulation. So that's their plan for the future and how they laid theirs out. Gilbert's in the middle of, in the whatever you want to call it, megapolis down there, surrounded by other cities and towns. We're surrounded by forest. We have Prescott Valley, kind of Chino to the north, but we have different issues and concerns than they do down there. So we might want to break it up into more opportunities or categories. Greensboro had 6. that they did through their community, and they explained each one here. They have a transit, and they have other issues that we don't have. But it kind of wanted to give you guys some ideas of what other people are doing. So comments from the general plan, questions online. So what do you like best about Prescott? And what this did was give us a word bubble of the biggest issues that came out. Small town, Prescott, downtown, courthouse. None of these were really things that we weren't really shocked about. And actually in none of the questions that we had in surveys, so we get anything that we weren't expecting. What about Prescott do you like to see improved in the next 10 years? Water's the biggest concern. Development, stop growth, traffic, quality of life, housing. Those are some of the big ones that came out of that. Oh, yeah. Okay. And the way they pulled out these words is that how often the word came up in people's, because these people were able just to write out however much they want, like it pulled out the words that were mentioned the most. So water, Prescott, people, traffic, housing, the development, those are things that we weren't really surprised about. So this is what we sent to you and had in the packet originally when we were just kind of brainstorming this. What other big ideas should we be considering? We figured community resiliency. This has come up a lot. You heard from the fire department. It's not, if we're going to have a fire, it's when, or a disaster. So we want to make sure we're addressing that. Creating great places. That kind of goes with people are wanting around the city, and growing economic competitiveness. So this is what we kind of threw out there at first. But then we went back to what's our theme? We have Plan Prescott, planning the future, preserving the past. And just so you know, next year, the Historic Preservation Conference is going to be held here in Prescott, and they're using this theme. So planning the future, preserving the past. We already had it, Plan Prescott. They're going to use this theme for their conference, bringing the historic preservation to Prescott next year. So we want to keep basing off of this, but keep thinking about our theme. So when we did that, what's more important for Prescott? So we had a bunch of people give some input on this before I emailed it to you guys. So we wanted to call it livability goals because, we want to create a great place to live here. And one of the main things is resiliency and sustainability. So under that, we could put fire adaptive community, which the fire chief talked to you about. Circulation, you got to be able to get out of the community. And we're not adjacent to an interstate or anything. We have some challenges to get out of our community that we need to be able to make sure we're addressing. Environmental planning, make sure we're still fire resilient, conservation, water resources, and climate. That all would probably go under resiliency and sustainability. Historic preservation is a big part of Prescott. We want to preserve our historic areas. So we have the historic master plan that's in the process of being updated right now. And then we have cultural assets. That's a section that was already in the general plan. And we thought we would break that out as a separate category because it is an important one within the city of Prescott. Then we have great places and neighborhoods, which would include land use, recreation, revitalization, and open space. We do have areas of town that are being revitalized, so we wanted to put that in there. And then economic competitiveness or prosperity, it's up to how we want to word that. We figured economic development, growth and cost of development and housing could go under there. And then community quality, which is like kind of what the public buildings and the other ones, which we have police, educational assets. We have a lot of schools here and the colleges. The library was very important from the public. We have the community center, which is an important asset to the community. And then we have the concerns about health care. That was a huge thing we've been hearing from the public about health care. So this was just our thoughts, but we want your input. Are we missing something, or can something go to another category or be called something else? So this is where we're going to brainstorm now.
Tammy, are the items listed as sub-items equal or are they just topics?
Topics
Okay.
or themes.
In looking at the chart there, two of the bigger ones was water and traffic. And they're one of 6 in this category. So I'm just wondering, just because it's there doesn't mean they're all equal in how much emphasis we want to give to it. It's just where the subject area would be.
Correct.
Okay.
I really like this organization. Some of those sub items are elements and some are not, correct?
Correct.
And also, the great places and neighborhoods and community quality seem to be a little fuzzy
Okay.
separation, maybe some different titles or something.
Okay.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
I'm at a real disadvantage, obviously, not having the background and of all this work that's been done previous to this. But when I look at that, I wonder a couple things. Number one, where do you capture Prescott's story? What's our story? Who are we? Where do we come from? Where are we going? The prelude to all this. What is the? I mean, we're pretty much a retirement community that has beautiful climate with great scenery and all that. But somehow that needs to be captured, I think, as an attention getter right at the beginning of this that says, here's our story, here's who we are, and this is where we think we want to go. And then you can ask yourself, well, what are we really doing in Prescott?
And that would be in the introduction.
Yeah. What? I mean, I've been on P&Z for about 4 years now, and I could pretty much sum up what we're doing. Okay, we're developing a North Prescott area. Well, how does that fit into all of these things? That's really what we're doing.
So right now we're trying to create the backbone. So as we create the backbone, then we're going to fill in everything else in between. So this is going to set up the stage moving forward. So and how these elements are going to come forward and be rewritten. But most of them are being rewritten by the departments. So that's going on in the background. And we're wrapping that up by the end of next month. So we're going to be bringing you the updated elements starting in January. And then hopefully we can figure out how they're going to fit into this. We just want to create this backbone to make sure we're on the right path. This also went out to the community, and I've got some positive feedback from a few of the residents in the community. They like that this idea better than the way our existing general plan is just by element. But a lot of these elements, they all interconnect with each other.
Yes.
And so what we saw with the Gilbert plan is that they had, here are the goals and all our goals and strategies, and this is what elements it's fulfilling. And a lot of them fulfill a bunch of the different required elements. So that's how they're showing that they've met the requirements of state statutes to address these elements. But
Yeah. The other thing I wondered about was somehow capturing the idea of durability. The world I lived in, nobody could see past the term of the current CEO. I mean, we had great plans, but we get a new CEO, everything changed. So how do you put an element of durability that assigns accountability to whoever's ever running the city
yes.
into this thing, and also capture the revenue assumptions that are going to be required to implement this stuff?
So we are creating.
I don't see that up there.
So like I said, this is just the backbone, but we also have the implementation section that we're going to be adding. And under the implementation section, we're going to have, here's the goals and the and what to do, the implementation, and then who's responsible for that. So we have been talking with the city manager, and this is kind of a vision she had too. We were actually on the same path when we met with her, that she wants to create these big ideas or themes for the city council. So they're going to be looking at a longer term too, rather than 2 years, maybe look out further. But we want to make sure we're kind of in line with what she's thinking about, which we'll know more in January. But we were trying to create this, get it forward, moving forward, so we can get going, because we need to have this done by end of July, so a draft. So, but we, like I said, this is the backbone to make sure how are the elements going to fit in. But we actually have the introduction, we have other sections, but like I said, this is the backbone.
So
This is designed to incorporate in our new fashion all of the elements that are required.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. So one of the areas that I have some anxiety about is Firewise. Rod and I have been co-chairing the Earth Day for the last 7, 8 years and working with the Firewise group. Last year was one of the most amazing giving by them of information to the public. And what they gave was a little bit scary, that I was aware that we're a Firewise area, but we're an endangered Firewise area extremely. And now I'm told insurance companies are dropping homes, especially mobile homes, so I'm curious, the long term, how that looks on paper when we express to the public who the other part of Prescott really is.
Well, under the resiliency and sustainability, we have a fire adaptive community, and that's coming off the strategic plan from the fire department, talking about the fire becoming a fire adaptive community. So that's we have their goals and strategies from their plan that were going to be incorporated into the general plan.
Would you explain that term, fire adaptive, a little bit more?
And I'd have to refer back to the fire chief's presentation
Right.
about the different things that incorporated into it, and I can send that presentation to you. So
Well, I have that, yeah.
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 So, but we've taken out portions of their plan or strategic plan, and then we're going to incorporate that into
Yeah.
the general plan.
But I see that communities all over the country, Florida, California, are in panic mode. People are becoming uninsured or self-insured or no insurance. And I would like it, in my mind, to be very clear to the public here, if you're looking at moving here or if you want to know what's going on here, that it should be discomforting, but you should know that we are addressing that.
Yes.
Yeah, along the same lines, those insurance problems can be reversed if we are responsive enough to the problem. I am on the Firewise committee for my HOA, and we are a Firewise community, but there are a lot here that could be better encouraged to join that movement.
Tammy, first of all, I'd like to agree with Tom about the history of Prescott. We have such a rich history. I think it'd be good to highlight some of our more notable historical events in the introduction, and including things like the rodeo, that kind of stuff. As far as the organization of the plan, I think you guys are on the right track. I noticed that some of the items up there are items that are required to be in the general plan, and some are not. And for the elements that are required, when they're mentioned, maybe we can say have them underlined or different color print or something like that. So as the reader is reading through the general plan and they see something like resiliency and sustainability, and all these different topics are listed, they know which ones are actually elements and which ones are not elements. I looked at the Gilbert General Plan and the Greensboro General Plan. I liked them both. I particularly liked the Gilbert General Plan, and a few of the things that I really liked about it was the organization of the general plan, and they even included navigating the general plan. It explains to the reader how to read the plan, how to use this plan. And I thought it was great. It has many photographs throughout the general plan and different colors. So I found that reading the Gilbert General Plan was not a chore.
Yes.
It was enjoyable reading that.
Yes.
The Prescott General Plan, if you have insomnia, just pull that thing out and you'll be asleep like that. So, right. And if we want the public to read this general plan before they vote on it, I think something like the general plan, the Gilbert general plan would be great because it's easy to navigate, it's well explained, it's got colorful photographs, it's fun to read. And I think if we have a general plan that is fun to read, the public will read it before they vote on it.
And that's why we chose them as one to show you. Another one was Scottsdale did the same format or same style, and it's very easier to read. That was some concerns we heard from Chino's new general plan. They did it the standard, each element, which is, what most consultants are going to do. Is the easiest. And people said how hard it was to read. It was not clear. So that's why we wanted to bring this forward. I mean, we had discussed this at the very beginning of doing this, but we wanted to bring it back forward again after you've had all the presentations from all the groups and everything. And before we really started digging into this in January, we want to make sure we were on the right path, the way we were thinking about it, and what your input was on it. Because we can change these categories even as we're moving forward. We go, oh, this doesn't fit now. Let's change it. This might make more sense. But we just want to give, this is a starting point.
Sure. And as the different elements are mentioned throughout the general plan, maybe we could, because we have required elements and we have optional elements, we may have some optional elements. Maybe the required elements can be one color, then optional elements identified as a different color. So as the reader is going through the general plan, they know what's required, what's optional, what we've chosen to, add into the general plan above and beyond the requirements.
What Gilbert did was in their implementation, when they have all your goals and strategies, that's where they kind of put, these are the required elements. They had it starred, and then these are the extra ones. And these goals and these strategies address these elements. And we were kind of thinking of that, but these sections would be different colored, but we can try to figure out ways of maybe have it that this is a required element or something.
Mr. Chair.
So
Wait.
I concur with Terry on the Gilbert plan. I like it. And I want to give kudos to the staff for digging these things out for us. There's too often a not invented here complex about that sort of thing. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel every time.
We want to win a reward. I want an award. Okay.
Tammy, I think about the usefulness of a plan. Okay, and I in my life I've seen a lot of plans that were good for lining your parakeet cage. Okay, so I wonder again, how do you make the plan readable? Number one, believable. Number two, and actually something that this city follows and implements correctly.
Yeah. As each of the departments are reviewing, like the circulation, that's being reviewed by the Bike and Ped Committee, and they were looking at, what's missing out of this? Maps. There were no maps under the circulation, very little. And so we have tons of information that we have in regards to bike routes and trails and stuff that they're adding into it. So what's going on is, just so you know, that in the background, we have a project team of city employees for each of the different departments that are updating elements. So water resources is looking at the water element. Land use is being reviewed by planning, circulations by the traffic engineer and public works. So the departments that will be working on those goals and implementing them are actually the ones working on them, because they're the ones that know what the issues are, what the 10-year goals are for their department.
Yeah, so I'm going to say it a different way. How do we ensure that the wish list turns into something that's actually something we do moving forward?
We're going to have an implementation section that we didn't have before. It was discussed in the last general plan, but it was never created or adopted. We're going to have it as part of the plan. And so in that, that's going to have these are the goals, these are the strategies, and this is who's responsible. And is it a short-term goal or is it a long-term goal? We're going to have all that spelled out, and then we, as staff, will bring it to the Planning and Zoning Commission and City Council once or twice a year, at least when they're doing the strategic plan every year. Hey, here's the short-term goals, or here's some long-term goals that we haven't started working on. How can we implement this into the city's plan for the year?
One last comment. When I think about, big plans, I look for the first page to basically tell me what's in the plan. Okay, and then that allows me then to decide if I want to really spend the time and money and effort and all the other things to go into
Sure.
really digesting the whole plan. So if we're talking about format, my guess is that the citizens would really appreciate a one-page executive summary right up front that says, here's who we are, here's what we're doing,
Yep.
and here's how we're going to afford it, and blah, 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 blah. And then you can go into all the detail, the facts that support that plan.
Our goal is to have two versions. We're going to have the long version that has everything. Then we're going to have a summarized version. So everything will be summarized. And the most important part of it is the goals and strategies, for how we're going to implement everything that's in the plan. But we're going to have the long version, and then we'll have a condensed version, more like an e-reader version that's easier to go through and even more condensed. That's our goal.
Just a comment. So,
Yeah.
Can I just say, speaking to the concern about where are we from, our history, the current general plan has a nice little two-page summary chronologically of where we came from and up to the 60s or 70s. So I think that has been addressed or looked at least, maybe not the way you want it. The other issue was just important. I think it's important. You handed out a little page. What is a general plan? And I think that should be included in there. And does this structure look at some of the elements that are required when your population jumps above 50,000?
Yes,
Are
we're
we
adding
including
those.
those two.
Yes, we are.
Tammy, the plan is basically put together to help City Council decide what they want to do. Are we going to prioritize certain items in here? Because there's a lot of items listed there of saying, all right, when you're going to start here are X numbers that we think you ought to start with first.
Those will be short-term goals. So we'll have them categorized. These are short-term goals, like the low-hanging fruit, and then these are longer-term goals that we know that these are continuous.
Well, long-term goals can still be, you got to start it now to have it for a long term. I'm talking about, you have X amount of time, X amount of money. Here are 5 that we think you ought to give attention to now, even though it's a short term or long term. Neither one of those matter. But this is where we recommend you give attention to now. These are ones that a year from now you can give attention to, or 2 years from now.
Yes. Yes, and then when working with the city manager with their creating their new strategic plan process, that they're going to be looking to the general plan, that make sure that they're addressing what's coming out of there and the items that need to be addressed. Yeah.
Question.
That would be after this coming year. The city council will be ahead of us on their strategic plan this year, and we can take from their strategic plan to help create that list. So they're going to tell us what they think are high priorities in the strategic plan that they come up with early next year, early in 24. So we actually have an advantage of getting an example from them in order to create what you're asking for this plan to provide back to them. So we'll see what types of things they were looking at, and that can help us prioritize things. Perhaps it's a way we organize this, that by category or by resiliency and sustainability, whatever, the order of these may be based on council's priority that we'll hear from them in January, probably.
My question is, on your summary version of this, I assume you're going to refer back to the full version so that it's really easy to navigate from one to the other?
We'll try.
Yeah.
We're working on that. That's a little above my pay grade, but we're hoping to get somebody on board to help us with that. We're working on it.
And Tammy, I just had a couple more things that I liked from the Gilbert General Plan. One of them was, how did citizens participate in the creation of this plan? I thought that was great because it includes like the panel that you have with all the green dots and red dots. It talks about the committee that was involved, public input, online survey that was included, so that when the public reads this, they have an understanding that this is really their plan, that the city of Prescott is doing this for the citizens of Prescott based on the input that the citizens of Prescott gave. And then the last thing I really liked also was general plan amendments. You know, we've had a lot of talk about what triggers a major amendment to the general plan. And I thought that Gilbert did a really good job of explaining that to the public of what triggers major changes to the general plan.
Terry, I didn't.
Do you like their triggers?
Actually, I thought their see, the way we have our triggers, it's complicated. It's a chart with different numbers based on so many acres and
Yeah.
this and, you know, how many square miles and distance and all this kind of, it was, ours is complicated. This is pretty simple to read and understand.
So my question is, did Gilbert capture the affordability question? This is what we want to do. Here's where the revenue is coming to afford that.
No, I didn't.
Well, we don't talk about that but we don't talk about that because we don't know, I mean, how it's going to get paid for. That's not the goal of the general plan, though.
Affordability, that's the city council figure out where they're going to get the money. Yeah.
It's a guide, it's a vision for the next 10 years, but we don't try to explain how they're going to pay for it.
But we don't even have the resources to estimate the cost of all these things. So
We can assume some things, though, right? I mean, is the revenue stable? Do we expect a downturn that's going to deny us revenue, which makes us useless?
Well, every year the state legislature can do that. They can cut funds from us, or they can reduce funds. I mean, we can get hit any year,
I'm just saying, if you want a plan that's meaningful, you got to know how you're going to pay for it.
but that's not our role for creating a general, that's not the role of
Whose
the
role
general
is it?
plan.
City council, yeah.
We can put recommendations in the plan. There's no doubt about that. How something could be paid for, depending on what it is. A lot of the things that are lined out in the plan are goals for decision-making, not necessarily directly implementing something. It's decision-making about, do we prioritize road construction over filling potholes? Is it maintenance or is it new? Things like that. The revenue source for that's going to be the same whether we identify roads first and potholes second or the other way around. For something that we're proposing that's new, that may be a brand new suggestion. Fire adaptive communities could mean that we adopt some citywide plan for how landscaping is done or how enforcement is done. We can say in the plan, this is something that's likely to cost a certain amount of money. Whether we can figure out the amount or not is another story. But we can say this may require an increase in property taxes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
George,
order to
I
implement.
have a perfect example why we should never do cost estimates in the general plan. The Big Chino Aquifer,
Yeah.
the pipeline.
But you can say that there are, make a note that says incremental funding required.
Right.
Yeah, but
It's not free to implement. There will be a cost involved, and we can identify that there will be a cost involved without a dollar figure attached to it.
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. That sets up a pattern of expectations 10 years from now in an economy that we have no clue what it will be
Right.
in 10 years.
A
And
huge
no way
amount
to
of pressure.
predict.
yeah, that's a huge amount of pressure on, well, wait a minute, you said that this should cost this, and it's not possible. I can't even go out and estimate what a car costs anymore.
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Okay. All right.
Bike. No, I bought an e-bike.
Do we have any more discussion on what Tammy's brought up so far? Or do you have any more for us in your presentation?
No, this was our work, this was our, discussion today of creating this backbone to make sure we are on the right path of what we were thinking and working with the city manager, coming up with these. And then as we move forward, these can be tweaked and adjusted or changed, as we're seeing how it's all going to fit together.
So I would like to, having served or tried to serve in the last general plan, I'm relieved with the process and the involvement of staff and that public. I'm happy to see JD come up here. And actually, I would like to make a recommendation, JD. If you would like to write something on wildlife, I sure would like to receive it. I think, or send it to Tammy. But this is a huge progress forwards and what the public should be looking at. Because I bet you maybe out of 40 some odd thousand, the last general plan, maybe 10 people read it.
And
Tammy,
I'm
is
not
it
sure it was
possible?
I'm not sure all of the committee read. One of the things that we're looking for, though, are ideas from you regarding these things. So, are these categories adequate? Do we want to add more information? Is it 5, 6, 8? What do you think are big?
I'd be interested in what is viewed under each category, because, all right, we have climate in there. We can't do a whole lot about climate. It's going to rain or it's going to snow. Boom. But what do we think about? Why do we want climate in here as part of the general plan when it's something we don't have much control over? Could we go over some of these subjects and just say, this is what we envisions under this particular one?
Yeah, as we start reviewing what was.
Okay. All right, Ted. Ted's got a comment.
I've been sitting there for a while, and I've been holding back, but I think it's time to comment. And specifically on some of the things Tom mentioned. We ask 11 smart people to spend 3 years to put together a general plan. If you look at the work Gary and the gang did in 2015, I can think of 3 things that came before us in the Planning Commission. One was that stretch of land on Willow Creek was supposed to be rezoned from residential to business general. And based on that, a developer came forth and presented a proposal to put a mini storage up there. The 2015 general plan said that we should have affordable housing. A developer, based on that, came to us on Rosser Road between the Rowley Simmons Center and the Greek Orthodox Church and presented something that vaguely represented affordable housing. And then in the 2015 general plan, it protected the airport with crash zones. Sometimes you use the dog whistle word open space. And then in 2017, the city council made a different deal. I think, and then at the beginning of all this, Ralph Hess, who was on the charter review committee with me, tried to get things into the charter to bring some actionability. So I think the important thing that you're trying to get to is you need actionability. Now, since the general plan is not a legal document, you can't enforce it. But I think as you go through these processes, developers are going to make decisions based on what you're putting down. Somehow there has to be a way. Ralph couldn't get it into the charter, and you can't make it legally binding, but there's got to be some way that you can figure out to better communicate that to the city council when it comes time to make a decision. Because George usually does it. He usually says this is in the 2015 general plan, but I don't know that everybody's always making that connection.
Just for a moment, one good way to address what Ted just talked about is when we create the implementation element, to use the format that's going to come out of council's strategic planning so that we're speaking the same language they speak every year or 2 years or 4 years whenever they do their strategic plan. We have things in the general plan that are simply plug and play from one to the other, and therefore it becomes a priority for council. And that may be an easy way to translate from one document to the other.
Do we need to have anything in there concerning the airport?
We will have information in there under land use. Because that'll be under the land use section, because that describes, the AVO and stuff.
It could be mentioned separately.
Yes.
I lean toward we ought to have that separate. It's a equal to land use and maybe in some ways a little greater on that. Okay, Jim? Mr. Chair.
Sure, go ahead, Rod.
Yeah, I think you're trying to get at, do we like that backbone? And I do. I understand that our issues are not the same as those of Gilbert or any other city, but this is an approach. It's not issues. It's an approach to putting the plan together, and I like it.
They're goals, livability goals.
Tammy, I like it. I like the direction that you guys are going very much. And I also like the comments from Ted. Even though this is not a legal document, I think anytime you guys are in front of the city council discussing a topic, you can say how it relates to the general plan, and also remind them that, okay, this is the general plan. If you're going to change it, which you're entitled to do, is it going to be a major change to the general plan? Is it going to be a minor change to the general plan? And the city councils in the future have an understanding of the direction that they're going, and if and when it does deviate from the general plan, and then they can give their public reasons why they're changing the general plan or changing their direction from the general plan.
I have just looking at the summary of the elements that you handed out way back when, the required elements and then the additional elements. I don't understand. There's a couple that I don't understand. You can explain them to me and then show me where they fall into this, our new framework. One was public services element, and the other was public buildings element.
That's under community quality. Oh, those are like the police, the schools, the library, the community center. Usually it includes the fire and stuff like that. So we have all that addressed in there. Yeah, just differently labeled.
And they had one split out the bicycling element, but that's going to be under
Transportation or circulation.
circulation.
Tammy, George, Chelsea, whoever, could you clarify for me, besides this being a statutory requirement from the state of Arizona, who's this plan for?
Well, it's for, go ahead.
That's a very good question. And we need to say at the beginning of the plan who it's for. It's for the residents of Prescott, and it's for the city council to implement. And we need to say that in here.
In the plan, yes.
In the plan.
And some of the other plans that we've been reviewing, we've seen great examples of how they spell that out. Like, this is how the citizens can use it, this is how the city council, and then how developers, because developers need to look at it too to see this is what the vision is for the city. How are you bringing a project forward that's meeting our goals and our issues in the city of Prescott?
You mentioned that we're going to be having the different departments drawing up their section
Yes.
of what their plans are and so forth. It comes to us. If we're not in agreement with what they're saying and we think X is more important than Y, it goes back to them, or do they just see it in the plan?
Or we try to get representatives from those departments here for your discussion. So if we're going to talk about circulation, perhaps we try and get our traffic engineering department to be represented so that you can discuss it with them. Ultimately, the recommendation that comes out of this doesn't have to match staff's recommendations exactly. We do have a lot of buy-in because we're ultimately going to be the ones who implement it. There has never been a situation here that I'm aware of where the city council went out and built a new road. The staff does that. The same with planning projects. But we adapt to what the the political level of government, which is the citizens and the council, tell us are the priorities. We'll tell you what we think they are, but if you think there's something different, we will adapt to them.
This would allow a back and forth then of, this is where staff thinks it should be, and we can say, this is what we think it should be. They can say, this is doable, or, this may not be doable because of this reason. So we have the face-to-face to be able to understand both parties' ideas.
Correct. And then come after July, then we have a 60-day comment period for the public to give their input. Then we can make sure we're all on the same page and make sure we're addressing what the citizens feel. And then we'll have all that bring back to the committee before it starts going to planning and zoning during the holidays, which is a lot of meetings. But yeah, but we'll have the 60-day comment period. We'll see make sure we addressed everything, and then we'll bring that forward to the Planning and Zoning Commission and start getting their input. And there's still more public comment from the committee. I mean, we're going to keep going as we're going through the public hearing process.
Tammy, we've often talked about the fact that the general plan doesn't have enforceability per se, but is a persuasive document, hopefully, to hold the council on the track that the citizens have voted for. And to the extent that people have often talked about wanting to put more potential for enforceability to whatever extent we can, I think the major versus minor amendment distinction is important. And if you could remind me, where are we? I forget who mentioned our 2015 version of the splits between major versus minor is complex, and for the average person reading it isn't going to make much sense, and who's going to do those calculations and blah, where are we as far as working through and coming to an agreement on major versus minor amendments?
We'll bring that forward in the future as a discussion, as we'll look at different what other jurisdictions like Gilbert and such, how they've written it, and then we'll bring it forward to you where you guys can discuss what the triggers are for major. Because when you look at that, so when a project comes forward, we'll see it's a rezoning project. That's when we look at the general plan. If it's a project that's allowed by right under the existing zoning, we go to and make sure we're trying to address the concerns, or issues that are coming forward. But if it's the property is already zoned, because this isn't changing any zoning, but it's for future rezonings that come forward. So when a project comes forward to be rezoned, we look at the general plan map, the land use map. Does it match what was voted on by the citizens that we came up with? And then if not, okay, then it's not in compliance with the general plan. Then we look at the major and minor triggers. Would this be just a minor amendment to the general plan, or would it trigger a major amendment?
And who would it be that is puzzling out whether or not there can be a workable change up to minor versus major amendment wording? Say brought forward, who's going to be bringing it forward?
Land use will, because it's part of the land. It's because we're the ones that enforce it.
Thank you.
In response to that, one of the things that looking at these other plans helps us with is to determine whether or not we can be clearer in that distinction. The distinction was created back in 2001, so it carried over from the 2003 plan to the 2015 plan without any modification. It was originally adopted prior to the adoption of the general plan by a separate ordinance. It was incorporated in the 15 plan as part of the plan. It's an element at the back. Is it 9 or something at the back? It was done in a format that was done at that time by most of the cities in the state. Certain size property changes in proximity to certain populations was the trigger. So it was a matrix. That doesn't mean that's the only way to do it.
And are you saying that as you've looked around the country at other general plans, people are moving away from that kind of density, land size triggers?
At least they're simplifying how to make that determination, as Gilbert did.
And Tammy, I want to add a little bit of support to what James said about making the airport it's an element of its own. During the open house, the thing that just totally shocked me was the tremendous support the Prescott public has for our airport. They've gotten a taste of real air service, jet service to Denver and Los Angeles, and they overwhelmingly love it. I mean, absolutely love our airport service, the new terminal and the jet service. And the airport has suddenly gone from, oh, by the way, yes, Prescott has an airport that, oh yeah, you know, it's been ignored for many, 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 many years. And now all of a sudden, it's become something that the citizens of Prescott are proud of and that they love. And I think it warrants almost, you know, having an element of its own.
Or we could add it under economic competitiveness because that's an economic driver. So it'd probably fit under with economic development, cost, you know, growth, housing, and then airport under economic competitiveness was where I would see it.
Okay. All right, sure.
Yeah, that brings to mind the idea that in this telling our story, you know, one of the things we do is train pilots because we have beautiful weather, and that needs to be front and center, right up in front. Tick 1 or tick 2. That's what we do in Prescott is train pilots.
And that's under educational assets,
yeah.
Embry-Riddle. Yeah, that's addressed in there.
And the other thing is that, listening to the discussion, I think everybody's pretty much in favor of an easy reader version.
Yes.
Yeah. Don't make it a legal document. You know, leave out all the whereases and who fors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, suggestions?
Yeah, I'd just like to say, being an easy reader does not mean simplistic. It
Right.
can be accessible and yet still have both teeth and all the information that people are going to want to see in it.
Yes,
Yeah. It should tell us where we've been and where we're going.
definitely.
And so all of Prescott can understand where Prescott's heading.
Back to your logo.
I like the concept of having a summary, so you can briefly go through and see this. The thicker it is, the less interest is going to be in reading it. But you can have the bigger one to get the details out of. That's a good idea.
And that's what Greensboro did. They had the big document, then you had the e-reader version. Chelsea wants it when it changes the pages, it has the lifesaver sound.
Anything else? Anybody else have any more comments, suggestions?
Well, this
Great help.
was, I think, a great discussion.
Okay, Rod?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily advocating this, but just throwing out an option rather than having two standalone documents, one called a summary and the other called the whole thing or whatever. What about appendices? What about referring from the summary to appendices for details?
That's something we can get.
We could link
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
from within the summary to
right,
the full document.
right.
Easy reader.
You're right. Easy reader. If somebody wants more detail, they can click on it and go to the details.
Well, that's one of the things we're asking for from a consultant to help us with.
Okay.
Of course, not everybody is computer literate and would be looking at it on something that has hyperlinks. So there's going to have to be a paper version as much as
Right.
some
Yeah.
might decry it as a doorstop. It still has to be available.
Yeah, but the link can be in words rather than just electronic. It can say, refer to appendix.
I do like the comment, I forget who made it, maybe Tammy, about maps. I'm a big fan of maps, and maybe because I just like the visual aspect of it as opposed to the wordiness. So yeah, the more maps, the better as far as I'm concerned.
And lots of color. I
Yeah.
liked Gilbert's their color maps and everything. They were great.
But we did see with like Chino's had too many pictures in it where it broke it up a lot and made it hard to read. But Gilbert's had them positioned just perfectly where it wasn't breaking it up and made it hard. It was easy to read.
Yes.
So that's one of the ones. That one in Scottsdale did a really good job on their plans, and that was another example I was looking at that I found after the Gilbert. But the Gilbert one was we really liked the format and the way it was laid out, and I thought it was a great example to show you guys, as well as the Greensboro North.
I don't think it should have evolved into being a picture book.
No.
No.
Yes.
Right.
But the pictures help make it interesting to read.
Yeah.
Right.
Just a lot of
Instead of
picture. The
an
way the
insomnia cure.
Gilbert, the way they, the statistics and stuff, the way they pictured it, it made it very easy and easier to read, I think. So we are looking at that.
One more comment. Just one. Yeah. My recommendation would be to take your time when you research what sustainability really means. Okay? A lot of people think that, shooting less buffaloes is sustainability. Well, no, that's not the idea. Using less water is not sustainability. So take your time there and really research what that means and what it means to the city.
Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Anybody from the public?
Lois.
Lois.
A new face. I come from the corporate America, so I'm used to plans, strategic planning, all those kind of things. And the way I've kind of wrapped my brain around this effort is this is the blueprint of what the community wants. And then how do you get it? You keep voting in council people that are going to work to get it. And when they aren't working towards it, then you vote them out. And that's how the public puts teeth in this. And as far as I'm concerned, I've never seen anyone deliver a plan if you're only looking at it once or twice a year. So that's one of the things that I've been talking to the city manager about is how do we bring this forward minimally quarterly with measures of where are we versus the plan, and that we start holding ourselves as a council accountable to the first month of every quarter or the last month of every quarter that we're doing time against bringing. Now, like you said, we'll be ahead of you. But then this will come in, and hopefully they'll all tie together, and we'll just keep going at that point. But that's the first thing. The second thing that you said about new ideas or topics in here, when you talk about why people love Prescott, and there's a lot of great stuff up there, and I totally agree with the airport being called out. But the other one for me is the things that we just, every time you go downtown and you go, thank God, it's music on the plaza. It's it's the food festivals and so there's all that aspect that I didn't quite see that come out yet. I see cultural assets and I think of that like the Western Heritage Museum and a few other things. But community quality for me is beyond just police and fire. And by the way, we have to keep that going forward with growth because we walked away from it for 25 years. And that's a problem. So I'd like to see the balance of police and fire. Fire is not just fire adaptive community. We got to build stations and all those other things. So community quality, I didn't think the people up north knew they were coming in as second-class citizens. So that I'd love to see. But the other thing for me in community quality, I don't know what the right words is, but it's, you know it when you see it. It's the smell of the place when you walk around, that people are smiling and they're having fun, and you see the children. It's the rodeo parades and the Christmas, season here in Acker and all that. You come to this community and you go, my God, that's nowhere else in this state. And so that is its own little section in community quality I'd like to see. Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
that may
Lois.
be something that we could help implement through the pictures and photographs that we were talking about adding to actually show people what
And
the
George, we
Councilwoman
have
was talking
another
about.
comment from the public. Sure.
You're allowed.
Hi, thanks. A number of people were asking, how do we put teeth in this paper tiger, basically? Because if this is just a blueprint, you know, how do we make sure that this is enforced later on, especially when we have council changes. And one of the things, and we were having, I live on the west side, and because there was so much upset with the rodeo, one of the things that I did was I started researching best practices of other cities as far as noise ordinance was concerned, and then who they use for the research, what that research consisted of, and then I contacted all these cities to find out what did they recommend, so that I got you know, between 50 decibels to, you know, 65 on like neighborhoods, that kind of thing. And this includes vehicles too. So I sent all of that to the council, and then Phil responded that he's going to use this going forward and gave it to Joseph so that Joseph could start looking into it. So, and I am going to do more reports like that. And I think eventually what the task force will do is help turn the general plan into ordinance. So new, you know, council steps in and they go, well, the heck with this, I don't want to do that. There's already code ordinance there, so they need to follow it. So that's how it gets. And you were the one that brought that up, George, in a couple meetings ago, that, you know, we enforce it by code ordinance. So this is the blueprint to get that done once more research is done, so that we can find out exactly, you know, what to do.
And charter amendments.
And charter amendments, good point.
Terry?
Okay, just a second, Gary. As far as ordinances, I think, aren't there limitations by state law as to what general plans can and cannot do for, you know?
Since I was named an accomplice in this, I'll respond.
Okay.
A lot of the things that are recommended in general plans for future action by council can be rendered into ordinances.
Okay, but that'll be
some
something the
things
city
cannot.
council
They're-
would do.
Right.
Yeah, something city council would do. Okay. All right. Sure.
So when I've been doing these reports, what I do is I look at best practices of other cities. So they've already done it, therefore it's already in code, therefore there's a legal precedent. And that's why I go that way, because if you have committees looking at everything, it could be like, you know, 5-10 years down the line. If we just look at best practices and there's legal precedent for them, and then we, you know, sort of adjust them for what we need, it sort of shortens the whole chain of doing it.
Okay. And then future councils, if it is codified with an ordinance, future councils can always change that ordinance, but it draws a lot of attention.
It's a public hearing process.
Right. Gary?
So I wanted to add, I've been a professional writer since 1977, training manuals, grants for 44 years, overall economic development plans, and lots more. And initially I asked the experts, quote unquote, what's the formula? What's the magic in writing? And they said, do what, with what, and how well. And the how well, to me, here is so important, and we're talking about simplicity, that anyone wanting to know about Prescott, for whatever reasons, whether it's to relocate them, their families, or businesses, or whatever, can go, oh, I get it. So this should be the aha moment. I get what Prescott, so do what, with what, and how well.
Okay. And along the lines also of reminding the city council that we do have a general plan, is that anytime there's a presentation, I mean, typically on council Tuesdays, we have, seems like we've been having regular executive session, study session, voting session. And every, or almost every study session should also have the presenter with a copy of the general plan and say, this is what we're telling you that we're doing, and this is why we're doing it, and this is why it conforms or does not conform with the general plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a fine point. I see this as a roadmap rather than a blueprint, and it's a fine distinction. But You think about that for a minute. It's a map of where we're going. Yeah.
And how we want to get there.
Considering the global things people have been talking about, this seems like thank you, a minor point. But when Lois brought up police and fire, it popped into my head, because I have family members who are in this area, ambulance service. I know it was a big to-do in the papers not too long ago about how Lifeline wasn't able to cover what they needed to cover and priority came in. We should have at least a line or two in there. I don't know if when talking about fire, because ambulance fire is so closely connected, or under the healthcare umbrella, but I think it would be important to include a word about the ambulance coverage.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Okay.
I'm highly encouraged by this meeting. I mean that very sincerely. Just the thought of revising the 2015 was enough to just send me into. So this is a fresh, new idea. Taking advantage, you guys have really done a great job of researching it and finding great examples. So, yay.
Yes.
Well,
definitely.
this
I think
never
you
happened
guys
in the
are-
last general plan. We did not sit down and talk this way.
You guys are definitely on the right track.
Yes, thank
We
you.
really like
Thank
it.
you to staff.
Well, we're hoping this set up the formula of moving forward, like
Yes.
the template of how we will be working moving forward as over the next, starting in January through July and moving forward.
And this time, if it doesn't work, Rod has been elected to be the scapegoat.
Okay. All right. Any more comments, questions, suggestions from anybody, including the public? All right.
You keep saying January. Does that mean December? Is that no-go?
Yeah, December, we decided not to have a meeting because it's between Christmas and New Year's. I'm sure everybody has other things to do, and to take some time off, but.
So,
Really upset by that?
Yes.
so the next meeting is going to be January 31st. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that was it.
So
Okay.
the structure is, if it's a 5 Wednesday month, it's still the last Wednesday, where
Yes.
most of the time it's the last Wednesday of the month. Okay.
Okay.
And if we feel like we need to have an extra meeting because of the discussion, we can try to figure out in the rooms how we can fit that in. But just so you know, also, as you know, we have an email list of like 200 people that these are actually sent to. The information, the packets are sent to, so people are well aware of it, and it keeps growing. I get emails all the time from people subscribing from the website. So, I mean, we have a list right now of about 200 people citizens of Prescott who are interested in the general plan, just so you know that. It's not just the general plan committee that gets the packets. I have a big distribution list that I send these out to, and the people are very happy that we're including the public so much and being that transparent. These are being broadcasted, recorded, so we are being very as transparent as we can be, and we are listening to idea emails and information from the public. So we are intaking that information.
So is that survey still active also on the site?
No, it's closed.
So with no meeting in December, and January has 5 Wednesdays, does anyone have a desire for like maybe an early January meeting? Would it be of any benefit, for example, on January 3rd, Wednesday the 3rd?
Let's check the calendar.
Would that be of benefit for you guys that are doing pretty much all the work here?
That's what I'm thinking, what we'll have available.
I lean toward keep it constant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wednesday is the last Wednesday.
Because we can bring more than one element to you. In January, we are bringing the housing element. Well, the housing committee's been working on goals and strategies for housing, and so they're getting ready to have that ready in January. But we can bring other elements that are done that have already been discussed, bring you for discussion too. So to make sure that we're fulfilling 2 to 5, to make sure we're using your time. You know, this one we just wanted to have a great discussion, which I'm really thrilled about the discussion we had today, and we're happy that you guys agree with the concept that we're trying to go in. We feel that this is a better format than the standard general plans we see, to be more innovative and just yeah.
So back to the meeting. Is there benefit
Motion, we accept that.
that you want to have another meeting?
No.
Oh,
Sorry.
You don't want to think about it?
okay. All right. So everybody's happy with waiting until
Yeah.
January 31st for the next meeting. Is that correct?
And like I said, and then we can also, as I'm getting updated elements from the group, from the other departments, I can start sending them to you to start looking at too. So if you need reading material over Christmas, you know, so, but,
I don't want to add to the confusion, but to me, it should be when you need us should dictate when we have the meeting, not just a number on a calendar. When you've got something that's tangible and you want some feedback on it, then call the meeting.
We appreciate that, and we may do that if we need additional meetings. But one of the things that we have to take into account is that we're getting other departments involved in writing these elements. Giving them a deadline helps. So having regularly scheduled meetings does help with that. Yeah.
Is important. Extra meetings, should something come up.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Plus we have
Everybody's
to look
happy?
at room and
Yep.
availability and us.
Oh,
so.
Rod?
I just want to say that at the beginning of this meeting, Tom introduced himself to me as the new troublemaker. But after a full meeting, I say, welcome, Tom.
All right. Everybody's happy? No more comments, questions, suggestions? All right. I think we can bring this meeting to an end.
Thank you.